Hello, YouTube. Welcome to my channel, Marriage, Politics, and Sports. This is the 83rd episode of my Let the Woman Tell It series. And this time there's a Nigerian lady who says she doesn't like to be called black. And she gives a perfectly good explanation on why not. And it's something I think as Americans of melanated Americans, black Americans, we would do well to think about what she says because a lot of the issues that before us here are not necessarily color issues, there's class issues. And our path forward is just as Americans is something that we should look for and look at, because we own at this country just like everybody else. But anyway, before I go on, I'm going to let her tell it, but like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Hit that notification bell. Make sure that you leave a comment, hit the like button. And if you agree with what her explanation is, make a comment. Let me know what you think so I can respond. And I'll respond to every comment. But without further ado, we're going to let this woman tell you why she doesn't want to be called black. And I like her explanation. It wasn't that way at first, but it grew on me.
I'm not black. Let me say that again. I am not black, okay? Hear me out. Growing up, my mom absolutely hated when we refer to ourselves as black. She's like, you're not black, you're Nigerian, you're African. I feel like the term someone is black obviously comes from the slave era, but it also just describes displaced people that don't know their heritage. So I feel like people that do know their heritage, to try and curb racism in some way, people are going to be racist. Ignorance is ignorance. You can't, but just to curb racism in a small way, stop referring to yourself as black. If you know where you're from, you're raised in a certain household. Somalians are Somalians, Ethiopians are Ethiopians, Nigerians are Nigerians. Like, if you know where you're from, why refer to yourself as a color? I feel like when we say black, it just sounds so harsh and like, this is black. I'm brown, you know? I'm Nigerian at the end of the day. Like, that's who I am. That's where I come from. So I understand when you say black British or black American because you don't know where you're from. You're just a person of color in the city that you're in. Obviously you still be treated the way you're treated, but just like, I feel like it just, when I hear someone refer to me as black, it just sounds so harsh, especially coming from a certain demographic. I think if you have the privilege of knowing where you're from, you shouldn't refer to yourself as a color because it further, pushes the racism narrative and further divides us, to be honest. And I also think it's a mindset thing because I remember that podcast where there's two, I think they were Somali. They're like, we're Somalians, we're not black. And everyone had a problem with that. Okay, if you're not black, what are you? Like he said, he's Somalian. He's not defined by a color that doesn't even fit the category of his skin. I know this is a very nuanced conversation, and obviously it depends on your mindset. And some people are like, I beg, I'm black. Okay, oh, you're black. For me and for a lot of other people, we don't want to be described by a color because I feel like it further pushes that the racist narrative and also further divides everybody. We're all human beings. We come from different walks of life. I come from a country where the sun is always out. So of course, adaptation, my skin is going to be melanated. And I feel like just knowing who you are adds to a person's character and how they hold themselves. So you don't have to just be reduced to a color. Unfortunately, that's what some people are facing because they don't know where they're from, and of course, that's not their fault. African American, you don't know where you're from, but you're obviously from Africa. So I prefer African American. At the end of the day, I feel like it's not something that's just going to be disappeared. It's not just going to go like, oh, let's all stop calling each other black, but it definitely is something to consider.
All right, so that was that. So I agree with her, but I don't like the African American mantra because all the black folks here, even if they were here for a couple of generations, are not necessarily African. Some of them had by way of the Caribbean, Haiti, some other places. We know the origination place is Africa, but there's a lot of culture that they build up from the Caribbean. You know what I'm saying? So I just think that once you become an American citizen, you're an American. That's what I think. That's what I think that we need to get used to saying, because once we do that, we can get out of the victim Olympics. We don't necessarily need to have false representation by the charlatans that have us our same skin color, but sell us out like a Brandon Johnson. So, or a woman like Tiffany Henyard, who was absolutely the worst person to ever be mayor in the history of mankind, as far as I'm concerned. Her and Brandon Johnson are running neck and neck in the losers race. But anyway, our pain, marriage, politics, and sports. Over and out.